Well, I want to agree with Angela and thank all of the sponsors that have come to the table today. It's just great to see the support that this topic has received. So thank you, one and all. Before this talk, I was talking to Angela, and she said, well, what do you have to say on state regulations in Colorado for equine ID? And I said, well, we don't have any, so I don't have anything to say. So it'll be short and sweet here, folks. But I did throw some stuff together, and I will mention some things that we're doing. That we have done specifically in Colorado over the years. So right at this particular point in time, the equine identification documentation obviously centers around the CVIs, the VS 1011 or the Coggins test papers, and the brand certificates. I think one thing, and I didn't realize this, some people, it takes a little longer for things to soak in. I've only been practicing for 40 some years. And I did not realize that everybody that did a Coggins test didn't have to put it on a 1011 form. But there are a number, and Angela couldn't tell you. I did not know that. I just thought if you took did a Coggins test, or some people have admonished me, an EIA test, and that it went on a VS 1011, but it doesn't. So I think this is one area that needs to be addressed. The other way we monitor horse movement, and I'm not going to say identification because the brand people just really get uptight if you say brands are identification. Brands are not identification. Brands are ownership. Quite honestly, I don't make that same distinction, but we have a couple of lawyers in the brands division that seem to think that there's a significant distinction. So I just wanted to point that out. One of the good things we're doing in Colorado is every one of our brand inspectors has now got a microchip reader that they carry around in their truck. And hopefully, as time goes on, we've got Bryce Lewis over here as one of our brand inspectors, ably assisted by his wife, Dr. Kate Anderson, or Lewis now, who pushes the Equine ID. She's helped me a lot with the Equine ID, and they sit over in Salida in their ranch and brainstorm Equine ID and how we can utilize it, put the microchip number on the lifetime brand card and that sort of thing. So some neat things to come down the line, I hope, on this aspect. So this is just what we pick up on the CVI, which is not much. You don't even have to put down the color. So you got a 3-year-old quarter horse, bay quarter horse gelding. That's about the size of it on a CVI. That doesn't tell you much. The Coggins test is probably the best form of ID we have, but again, it's not required in all states. But that's it. That's it. And Katie did the black Frisian mares. I don't even know if these are geldings or mares, but same thing. Bunch of Frisians, you have not a clue which one's which. And I can tell you, if I was writing a Coggins test and doing it longhand, my picture wouldn't look like that. So basically, we have some issues. Brands in Colorado, we require brand inspection at the change of ownership when you go across state lines and when you go 75 miles within the state. Now, all that's well and good. I shouldn't tell you this, but I can't tell you how many times I've gone more than 75 miles without getting a brand inspection. Well, my wife has got a permanent brand card on her horse, but I don't on mine. So my point is enforcement is an issue. Some states do a lot better than others. Wyoming does a great job of brand enforcement, and Montana does a good job of brand enforcement. But a lot of the other states, not so much. So that's an issue that we have. They know it anyway. Okay, so the movement documentation, where do we have problems or lack of enforcement at the borders? We've got great enforcement in our office. Dr. Turner and a bunch of our folks in our office are on top of the health certificates all the time. And I can tell you I will be getting letters here in the next week or two because I've been at the stock show writing health certificates for the last 2 weeks. And I'm sure I didn't do them just exactly right. The other thing, the current Coggins paperwork, again, it's not the best. We don't have a exact form of identification, shipping logs, and the venue entry and exit records. I think where this became the most important was, and I don't see Jerry here, but he could tell you a lot more than I can, Dr. Black, when we talk about the Ogden, Utah herpes event, it took us forever to find out what horses were at Ogden. I mean, it was, what was it, Katie, 2 to 3 weeks before we knew for sure, and then we only knew the contestants. We didn't know about the turnback horses or the 3 or 4 2-year-olds that were just tied to the trailer so they could get seasoned. I mean, so this is a real issue, and this is where, if we had Equine ID, it would really pay. Okay, so this is, I'm going to step aside a little bit and just tell you some of the special things we do in Colorado with equine identification, just briefly. And one of the best I'm having a senior moment here. One of the things that's worked best for us in Colorado is to capitalize on the emergency management aspect. And Dr. Lewis has helped me with this, where we go and we visit to these people in Colorado that have experienced forest fires. And I can tell you when this starts coming through your community, the horses start running, and they break fences, and they're all over every place. And this is a video, and I'll expand on it tomorrow. But there are hundreds of horses running around, and you have not a clue whose horse they are. And they take them to the fairgrounds, and the brand inspectors do their thing and really do a good job entering them in. But if you don't have any records of your bay horse, how are you going to get them tied up? And I know my wife just hates it when I come to these meetings, especially when they're out of town. And it was the NIAA meeting a number of years ago. It was somewhere. I don't know where it was. And it was in March, and we were having a tremendous amount of wildfires. And my wife, trying to get me to stay home, said, well, what am I going to do with the horses if we have a forest fire? And I said, well, load your 2 mares up and 1 other in the trailer and turn the rest of them loose. And she said, well, why would I do that? And I said, because you won't let me brand your 2 mares. She said, I'm not putting that thing on my horses. And so we have 2 horses that aren't branded and the rest aren't. The others are going to get turned out. Bryce will find them. And Linda will have the 2. But they all do have microchips too. So in our little program for emergency management, we tell people, microchip your horse, and we will give you one of these cards, and it's got the horse's microchip number, the name of the horse, and the owner. And so when they pick up your horse at the fairgrounds, all you have to do is wand the horse. You got the number, show the brand inspector your little card, and you get to take your horse home. So this particular card is a little more unique because this is a smart chip, or I'm not exactly sure what they call it, but it's got a tremendous amount of memory. And we've got a program, or had a program, where we stick this card with this chip into our computer and then wand the horse, Bluetooth the microchip number to the computer, and a screen comes up with the health certificate, the brand inspection, and the Coggins test, with a little red light, green light underneath each one of them. So if it's current, you get a green light. If it's out of date, you get a red light. And with this, you can also, when people check in, you can put that smart card in your computer, and it can generate. You go to stall 35 and you're in event 123 at 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. So it's got some real advantages, and that's one thing we've done in Colorado. And I am going to, Angela and I and Katie, none of us agree all the time. Matter of fact, Angela and Katie got together and they said, we just love your wife and we haven't even met her yet. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, we have these discussions and then the next week you come back and you've really mellowed out. So what happened is I went home and told my wife, and my wife told me how to respond. And but see these numbers? We did this before we got USA herds. We got it in a database, a state database. But that programmer left the state. And now we're not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure we can find it if it were a big issue. But I can't find it, and I've looked for it. And Marvin, when we first started talking about this a number of years ago, he says, Carl, our clinic really wants to start microchipping these horses, and we'd like to have you come help us out. And I never really followed up with it completely because I didn't feel comfortable because we don't have a database, a good one. That's why I think it needs to be a centralized database. And I will say, I think at the end of the day, in this meeting, we need to, in my opinion, agree to have 840 tags. We need to have the tags, the microchip number on the health certificate or CVI and on the Coggins test, and we need to have a centralized database. Those three things. And if we had those three things, all of the issues we've been talking about would be taken care of. And we talked about this. Dr. Moorhead, in all his infinite wisdom, a number of years ago came up with that and told us. And we haven't done it. We're talking about it and we're waiting to see how the industry feels. And we're going to keep talking about it, see how the industry feels unless we, today, the time is right. And this is the right thing to do.